Joining me now is award-winning writer and activist Raquel Willis. Raquel, thank you for coming to the Sunday Show.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So I'm just overall, your reaction to these efforts around the country to target the trans community and target specifically young people who are seeking gender-affirming care.
Well, it's very disheartening. I think of my own personal journey, the journey of folks that I know, and it takes so much to be brave and share your truth. And to be young and be able to do that is something that we should be championing. We should be rallying behind these young trans and non-binary youth who are saying who they are in a world that continuously tells them they shouldn't exist.
How do these laws put their lives at risk?
Well, we continue to see the stoking of rhetorical violence, right? We see politicians and other adults in their lives being emboldened to disrespect and disregard their truths. But of course, we also know that it can lead to an increase in risk of suicidality, or we can see a heightened risk of depression. And so we really don't want to see these unhealthy outcomes for young people.
You know, I mentioned the trans women who have been murdered just in the past month alone. But this epidemic of, trans women, particularly trans women of color, and in specifically Black trans women, has been happening for years now. And we're talking about it on this show. But why don't you think those murders have gotten the attention they deserve?
Yeah, well, we're facing a matrix of violence. So we know that this political violence is happening to restrict the rights of trans people and trans youth across the board. But that is completely connected as well to this physical violence and murder that is often happening to particularly Black and brown trans women. And again, we have to talk about white supremacy at every chance that we get.
Okay, do it.
Because Black and brown trans people are so routinely erased from conversations around what it means to be marginalized within the society. We need to be talking about the difficulties in getting access to education, healthcare, employment, housing, and so much more for Black and brown trans people.
What do you say to those young trans non-binary kids out there who might be living in one of these states that is targeting them? What do you say to them to help them keep their heads up and keep their hope?
Yeah, well, I just like people to know I grew up in Augusta, Georgia in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I know what it's like to feel isolated, but I want you to hold on and just know that there is a community out there for you. There are people fighting every day to keep you alive and also just to fight for you to live the best life. You deserve a full, whole, healthy life like anyone else. If
you had a chance to talk to any of these legislators, and I'm the only one who comes to mind, but she's not the only one, Governor Ivey of Alabama, if she were here right now, what would you say to her? I would ask her what she's going through. I think when folks are coming at the trans community, it is often coming from a place of insecurity. Maybe it's a political insecurity and you want to use our community as fodder. But we're not going to stand for that any longer. Trans people have existed throughout time and we're not going anywhere. And we're going to fight for our young people. Is the Biden administration doing enough in fighting for the trans community and fighting for the LGBTQ community in general, do you think? Well, I think it's great that we have an administration now that positively and affirmingly speaks to trans people and speaks to the trans experience, but none of our political leaders are doing enough for our community. We need our political leaders out there on the offense, not just in a defense mode. So they're waiting for these right-wing conservative folks to come at our community when they should have been already ensuring our protections across the board. One more question for you about Florida and the Don't Say Gay bill. Why do you think Governor DeSantis is so focused on the LGBTQ community, so focused that he signed into law this Don't Say Gay bill?
Well, I think that they have seen success in trying to paint this idea that the LGBTQ community is targeting young kids. And they just don't understand that there has always been a complexity of gender and identity. And we have to own that. We have to acknowledge it. We can't run away from it. And it's completely connected to the fights against these discussions around race and racism within the history of this country. We're never going to progress if we continue to sweep these issues under the rug and act as if they have never existed. So what I would say to Governor DeSantis is, you got to hang it up, you know? You got to actually show up for communities on the margins and not use us as political fodder.
Right, because as the saying used to go back in the 90s here in New York, we're here, we're queer, get used to it.